Hello, Kansas City. Welcome to another wonderful day out there. I hope you're having a great day, and thanks for tuning in to Life After. We are exploring a lot of fun stories on this show. And if you've never heard of this show, it's a show to talk to students after they do their high school thing and find out where they go off into and what their pursuits might be. I'm joined today by a student I knew a long time back and a special school that I worked at in Kansas City called Paseo Academy. So he's representing, he's got his logo on there. That's fantastic. So welcome, Matthew Oates.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Mr. Odam.
Thank you, sir. So the first question that we kind of explore is that infamous year that you graduated and what you really kind of remember about some of the takeaways from that year, or what kind of stayed with you as you went about your next move. But let's start with just simple, like what year was it, and what do you remember about it?
So I graduated in 2003. So when I think back to what was just kind of going on in the world and everything around that time, I know, the Iraq War would end up beginning, in March of my senior year, and so I ended up having a few friends who would go on and serve in the military from there. But that was a big topic of discussion as we were nearing, graduation. Just the uncertainty of what that meant and what that meant, especially for our generation, since we were all turning 18 at that point, and looking forward. I remember having a great time. Many good friends, great teachers. I interact every now and then with some of my teachers in the past, and I always have to tell them, thank you for I guess just kind of taking us in stride. There were times where it's like, wow, man, we were, really, maybe being a little hard with the teachers, but, they allowed us to express ourselves, how we were feeling about things, empowered us as future young adults. And, especially around just decision making and making good choices and being accountable to those choices. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we always look back and see it a little differently, but now young people are being young people, and
right.
that's, kind of the name of the game when you're younger. And then looking back on it, I know we all think, man, we gave some people a hard time, but
Right.
hey, that's what we sign up for as educators. We're here for real. And we know, it's like I used to call it just growing pains, but there's a lot of those young people out there. So tell us, kind of, you remember that year, you remember some of the politics and some of the kind of cultural feel of what 2003 felt like. What do you remember making your move after you graduated? Kind of that next moment, or the very day after, or the weeks to come. Do you remember kind of what you were drawn to, or what path you started to take?
Yeah, so I was really unsure my senior year of what I wanted to do. I mean, I considered military options. I considered, the college route, of course, and just really unsure about what I wanted to do. I knew I was really good with math and science, but also my discipline with music. And so I just, I was just completely unsure. So my teachers, they really helped me out to, kind of think through the process and everything. It's kind of weird to say today, but I had never even heard what an engineer was until my senior year of high school. And that was having a conversation with my calculus teacher, Mr. Naves. And he just told me, like, hey, man, you're good at math, you're good at science. You should really consider it to be an electrical engineer. I was going back and forth between that and a meteorologist, actually. But I ended up, going with electrical engineering, and it's really just thankful to all those kind of just really heartfelt conversations that teachers would have, like after class or after school. So yeah, you get to graduation, it was kind of surreal, like, man, am I really done? And it didn't really hit you that, your K through 12 years were over until I was on the highway with a packed car heading to college. And you're just like, okay, yeah, this is different, it's not just like summer camp or like, something like that. Like, no, this is real. Like, and it was an adjustment, to make, and it was, but I love the experience. I keep in contact with a lot of people still, so I'm always happy, to reminisce on those times.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic. And so, did you go far? Did you were you stay near to Kansas City? Like, how far away from here did you travel? And was that kind of one of your goals, or were you trying to stay near? Or
So I went
how did that?
I went to the University of Missouri Columbia. So I thought, there were a few other options, mostly in the Midwest. I think I did apply to one East Coast school and was accepted. But I think for me, you know, I thought University of Missouri was close enough that if I needed to get home for whatever reason, it was okay. But it was far enough away that like my mom just wasn't gonna just hop in the car and pop up on me every weekend or things like that. So you know, gave me, I guess you could say, some controlled independence, right? Where like if I needed that safety net, I could get back quick, but it was far enough away where I got to manage myself and my time and my life and succeed or fail in that process along the way. So yeah.
Gotcha. So your process at UMKC, my goodness, sorry, one of those other schools that's in the neighborhood where I went to school the most, but also affiliated with Mizzou, and that they're both Missouri colleges. So you finished your experience there and went on from there, or was that kind of the final parts of your education post high school? Or I honestly don't know, where'd it go from there?
Yeah, no, that was I got my degree in electrical engineering and computer engineering, so 2 degrees and a minor with mathematics while I was there.
Wow.
And it was a great 5 years. I enjoyed my time there, and I had considered that maybe going the doctoral route. I thought about being a professor for a little bit, but by the end of that program, I was kind of done with school, and this would have been summer 2008. So this is right about when the economy's preparing to collapse.
Hmm.
But at that point, all I knew about was $4 gas that I needed in my Jeep. And so I was like, I need to make some money. I need to go out here and make some money. And so I, did internships at my current company, all throughout college. And so when I graduated, they had an offer for me, and I'm thankful for the company I work for, because that was a really scary time to graduate college, which is scary in general, but then definitely the leading side of the Great Recession, and just unsure of what this means to you as a young person.
Very good. So wow, that's really a fortunate path, and like one that you made happen, and lots of moves that you were making that led to the next move. It sounds like the internships and things like that don't just fall into people's laps. So well done. Fantastic to hear that way that played out. And you're saying 5 years on that campus, so that was an advanced degree also, is that right?
No, so it was just 2 undergrad, 2 bachelors. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Wow. But yeah, I mean, even so that certifies you to be able to do that job, and then you could potentially go back to school. So you came out the door, you work with the people you worked with going through school. You're
Yeah.
still there now, is that right?
Correct.
Wow. All right. So that must feel satisfying. And then I think I'm right that you have also had some experience with us in the district level here in KCPS. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember seeing your name and things and being like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's Matthew Oates. I know
Yeah.
him from Paseo. How did you get in? Will you tell us like what that was that you got
Okay.
involved in? Because I know that's special to me as an
Right.
educator to see somebody else kind of jump in.
Yeah.
What drew you to doing that? What did you do? And then how are you still involved, if at all?
Yeah. So I served as a school board member for Kansas City Public Schools from 2015 to 2019. I got involved right out of college with schools. Going to Mizzou, I always cherish my experience in Kansas City Public Schools, but going to college made me realize that there were some items and activities and experiences that maybe we were just missing, as part of our offering. And so I just wanted to come back and be able to give back directly. I had a very profound conversation with a speaker who had came to Mizzou one time, and he talked about, not just being, don't just graduate, move way out, and then come back, way out into, like, we'll say for our area, maybe out in Johnson County or way out in the suburbs, and never be seen again by the system that needs you most. It's like, yeah, a wealthy area, if you got it, that's fine. But like, they don't really benefit from your presence. There's going to be 800 engineers there, and 1,000 doctors, 4,000 lawyers, all these things, and they're like, they won't benefit from your presence. But they're like, your presence in the communities that you come from, just having someone that someone can say, hey, I know Matt, he's an engineer, which is something like I had never even heard of before, and so that simple presence. And you talk about how that builds a network where, if you're a young person and you're like, hey, I want to be an engineer, I coach sports right now, and some of my kids who are interested, I'll bring them, I'll say, hey, come up to the job. We can walk around and take a look. And and just being able to be that presence for them was something that was important to me. So I got involved tutoring math, actually, at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. And so from there, I would just try to support the district. I know they did the Opportunity Knocks thing where they were going around, getting feedback from community members door by door. So I volunteered for that, like in 2010, 2011. And then after right sizing, when they closed schools in the area, there was a conversation in my neighborhood about what to do with one of the mothball schools. And so I ended up working with a group of people in my community to help reopen that school as an elementary school. So that's Held Cook Elementary School. So I got to work with them on that. And then in 2015, when the previous school board member before me, he was leaving because he was taking a job in another city. And, people came to me and said, hey, I think you should run for school board. You're kind of the guy, you have the passion, you have the experience, you think you should go for it. And so it was something that I always thought of. I'd always thought like 40-year-old me would do it and not 29-year-old me.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience. It is a taxing one, but it's one worth, I felt like, fighting for. And if I'm going to be exhausted at the end of the day, for these kids, it's totally worth it to me. So
It's wonderful. And I'm having a blast hearing, how involved you are and how special that is. I've always heard educators talk about hearing the stories of other educators and knowing, we don't all lead to each other, but we may give each other little glimpses of this could be a cool, path, or this could be a cool thing to do with your time. So if you're listening, young people, it is a cool thing to do with your time. And you can hear, we don't have to wait to be involved like we used to think we did, or young people have a lot of offerings to offer other young people, and that kind of exposure. It's also really exciting to hear you talk about opening up paths by being an example, because one of the goals of this show is discussing, career paths that maybe students haven't had introduced to them near enough, and knowing someone, or like you're saying, kind of building this eventual network of people to look to for more suggestions, advice, and then also just showing it can happen. So you're rocking it that way, and I know that must feel good, and you're taking all those things on. You talk about feeling weighted, but I bet it feels great to be involved and invested, because I know from my own experience it feels great. It feels great to hear you tell your story, I will tell you that. So let's do this as kind of the final thoughts on this wonderful story. You might have heard things, and I think Mr. Naves comes up a bunch, like shout out to who we call Brother Naves, William Naves from Paseo, because he's been mentioned a number of times in these interviews as someone who got the ability to get in someone's head when they were a senior. And I longed for that. In 2003, I was 2 years in as a teacher, and I really looked up to Naves also. He gave the senior speech every year. He just had this like unmistakable power to really help you point yourself a little bit before you left. So knowing all that, he may have shared gems with you, like ain't nothing to it but to do it, or right. He always said that all the time. And what else do you think young people need to hear today, or what did you hear that did such positive work for you as you went about your path, that you think you could pay it forward and mention just now, kind of young people listening for that final push of advice from the great Matthew Oates here,
Yeah.
who's joining us today? What do you think?
So I will say I would say the most pivotal year of my life would have been my fifth grade year with Mrs. Canary Smith, who just recently passed away in last year. But she was an awesome teacher, but she was tough. And the previous, K through 4, I had pretty much skated on, being a smart kid, personable, good looks, just kind of skated on that. And then I ran into her, and she was completely unimpressed. And that first quarter was so tough. I mean, just really I would say maybe 10-year-old me was a people pleaser, but it just was not happening. And she gave me my first ever D, actually, in behavior. They used to grade you, I don't know if they still grade you in behavior, but in behavior. And she wrote on there, you need to be a leader, And so I came home, crying my eyes out. I'm telling my mom goes up there, we set a parent teacher conference. And Ms. Smith looks at me right in the face and just tells me, she was like, Matthew, I know that you're smart. I know that you have all these gifts and talents and stuff, but it doesn't mean anything if nobody cares, if nobody will follow you or, listen to you or take your lead, or if you're only concerned about yourself and your own personal, accomplishment. And so she was like, we have an issue in the classroom, and I've yet to see you, take control or even try to be a leader. And so that year, not only did I have rigorous academic training that year, but I also went through like a rigorous leadership training, just about everything. We would she would give me books to read. I remember she gave me Animal Farm, and we had really intense conversations about false prophets, and sometimes how following the crowd can lead you down bad paths and things like this. There was just so many robust conversations, and it would always be about preparing me to the end. And that stuck with me pretty much throughout the rest of my life, even today. And I got to see her, when I was working, we were entertaining some clients, and she had won the Buck O'Neill seat at the Royal Stadium. I just happened to be there for that day. And I saw her on the video board, and I pretty much like leapt up and like hopped over some railings and seats to get over to her and say hello. And to your point that you talked about, like sometimes you don't know if somebody remembers you. You think to yourself, it's been, at that point I was probably 25. So it's like, it's been 15 years. She's had, hundreds of students, who knows if she remembers me. I looked at her, I said, hey, Ms. Smith. And I was like, do you know who I am? She was like, Matthew Oates. And so we talked for a little bit, and then she kind of started turning her face up, and she was like, are you still being a leader? And I was just like, yeah, actually, yeah. And so it was just, at the time I thought she was so unfair, and I was like, why are you picking on me? Everyone else doesn't have to do this. Why is it just me? But it's something that's all stuck with me all the way through.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, and a really neat story to be out there at Kaufman and not know that your favorite teacher in the world would be getting the Buck O'Neill seat that night.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to be able to make, I bet she felt special knowing that you came all the way over there to tell her,
Yeah.
in that moment also. So,
Yeah.
wow, young people, I hope you've taken a lot in and you're watching, even everybody in Kansas City. A fantastic tale today, and a narrative that we heard from the man himself, of why he wanted to go down that path. So if you like these shows, and many thanks to Matthew Oates for doing this today, but if you're also listening and would like to take part in this, get a hold of me. My name is Chris Odam. You can reach out to me at kcpublicschools.org, and I would be glad to listen and help you get a platform to tell your story, because we never know. All these interviews keep telling me that somebody else's story affected somebody else's story and led to another thing that they never thought about before they knew that this one person had done so. And then, so let me tell you, the other cool thing that's happening, if you're watching these, is there's a lot of people who are now connecting with each other who went to school together or taught with each other, or it's fantastic that people are now re-networking when it's like 10 and 15 years later, myself included. It's really been really wonderful to touch base and find out where things go when we really only see people for about 4 years in high school, and then these boundless things that happen in like a week right after you
Yeah,
graduate. So
right.
right. So thank you, Mr. Oates, for being here, sir. Thank you, Kansas City, for taking some time to listen to us. This has been another fantastic episode of Life After.